So hello and welcome to this Gateway Women Masterclass webinar on coping with Mother's Day. In the UK, Mother's Day is called Mothering Sunday and is on Sunday the 14th of March, which is tomorrow. But if you're watching this on another day or around May the 9th was International Mother's Day, we really hope that you find the techniques and tips that we're going to discuss today really helpful. So welcome to this webinar to Melanie Dagg, who is one of Gateway Women's licensed facilitators for the Reignite Weekend and a Gateway Gatherings host for the Northeast of England, to Sarah Lawrence, who is the founder of After the Storm, a coach and counsellor, 1/3 of the Full Stop podcast and a new Gateway Women workshop facilitator, to Yvonne John, who is one of our facilitation team, another licensed facilitator, also the author of Dreaming of a Life Unlived, and a huge advocate for the Black childless community in the UK. And to Karen Enfield, my trusty wing woman, Gateway Women's operations director, a trainee grief therapist, and a Gateway Women facilitator, and also the leader of the Online Bee, which ran in 2020 and is running again in 2021. And I forgot to say who I am. Hopefully you know me. I'm Jodie Day. I'm the founder of Gateway Women. I'm a psychotherapist and I'm the author of this book, Living the Life Unexpected, How to Find Hope, Meaning and a Fulfilling Future Without Children. Lovely to see so many of you here. Please do say in the chat where you are coming in from, and welcome. So I think just to kind of kick off, maybe we'll just do a little round with the five of us of how we're feeling ourselves about Mother's Day, maybe compared to how we might have felt in previous years. Karen, do you feel okay? I know that it's not Mother's Day for you in Holland, but how has Mother's Day been for you in the past, and how is it coming up this year?
Hi everyone, and thank you, Jodie, for that lovely introduction, and thank you also for having us here. And Mother's Day, it's been it used to be a very tricky day for me, just right after my when I was new into my childless journey, I should say. It was a day that kind of made me want to kind of hide under the duvet with a box of chocolates, even though I'm not a fan of chocolates, but that day I did. And, you know, kind of hide away from the world, skip my social media channels and just kind of pretend that the day wasn't out there and that I didn't have to be faced with it. So that was me, I would say maybe 7, 8 years ago. That was how I would experience Mother's Day. And since the last few years, I would say last 3 years or so, I look at Mother's Day. I even have a new name for it. I call it Others Day. So I've kind of crossed off the M a little bit, put the M kind of between brackets, because I am still a daughter of a mum, and I do celebrate my mum on Mother's Day and my English mother-in-law on Mothering Sunday. So I have a double whammy every year. But I now call it Others Day, where I actually also kind of celebrate my inner nurturing side of me that I have within myself. So I kind of really look after myself on that day, and it doesn't make me want to hide under a duvet anymore. So that's where I'm at with Mother's Day. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Melanie, how has Mother's Day been for you in the past, and where are you at with it these days?
I think in the early days, I really struggled with it, and it was a day of very much a day of grief for me, because I'd lost a baby. Not long after I'd lost a baby, it would just fell me completely. However, I really punished myself in a way, because I felt like I had to put on this front that I was all right. I had to go and do something with my mum. I had to take her out. And my sister, who has 5 kids, she was always doing something with her family. So I felt like it was my responsibility to do something with my mum on that day. Now I've come a long way in my grief journey now, and I also discovered, and it was purely by chance, after my marriage broke up, and I just had to work when I could work, and sometimes that work fell on Mother's Day. And so I had to say, I can't do the actual day, so shall we go out a different day? And we had a lovely time. We had a lovely lunch. it was actually probably more pleasurable because we weren't surrounded by, you know, other families and busyness and stressed waiters and waitresses, and it was just a really nice time. And it didn't bother my mum one iota. She had a lovely day. She had time with me. And from that point on, I thought, I don't actually have to do Mother's Day, the actual day. So I don't anymore. I still see my mum, I still do something special for her, but I don't have to do the big celebration, if you like.
So that's brilliant. There's our first tip for our viewers. You know, you don't have to celebrate Mother's Day on Mother's Day.
No. And it does, I know it does depend on how your mum takes that, but I think if you can let them know how hard it is for you, I think most mums hopefully will accept that. I know that's not always the case, but yeah.
We can talk more about how it works on the other side, you know, how our mothers cope with Mother's Day with us later. But thank you so much. Yvonne, where are you at with Mother's Day?
So for me, I feel like I'm not big on the celebration of it, and I never have been dealing with my grief around childlessness. I would do the traditional things of sending my mum a card, sending flowers, or going around to my mum's, which I would still do. That Melanie has, like, listening to Melanie, it's reminded me that it was a ritual, and it felt like I have to do this. So I didn't see that there was any other options around it. It was something I had to do. I know post working through my grief, I realised that Mother's Day was hard, so I wouldn't be on social media for that particular day. It was the one day I did avoid it because I did find it hard. And I think I really noticed it when a particular year my friend sent a Mother's Day card from my goddaughters and celebrated me for, you know, someone who's like a mum, which really touched me. And I think that was the first year it really hit home how much I wasn't going to have someone celebrating me, but could have it in other ways, but also how what it meant, because it was very one-sided. It was just me doing it for my mum. And I think from then I started to celebrate the other women in my life who I felt had a mothering spirit towards me, and I would send them cards to celebrate them. And it's something I've continued now and starting to celebrate the mother within, which I also now do for myself. So it's really, you know, I really started to turn it around and look at what it does mean. And I don't have to be a mum and have to give a child to celebrate Mother's Day. Actually, I can celebrate the mother within, because actually we're mothering every day. We you know, we're nurturing, we're giving ourselves over to different things all the time. So I felt that was a great way to celebrate that for me.
That is beautiful, and it kind of ties in with a kind of a social media post that I created, which always gets a lot of likes, which is around this time of year, which is, you know, mother is a verb, not a noun. You know, we do a lot of mothering things. Yeah. You know, and you know, birth is biological, mothering is psychological. That, you know, there are many, you know, not every woman who gives birth is able to be mothering for lots of complicated, you know, reasons, and lots of us who didn't get to, you know, have our own children have the capacity, and sometimes it's about finding the outlet for that. And I think that idea of you sending cards and supporting those women who've had a mothering influence on your life is really beautiful, really beautiful. Thank you for that. Sarah, how has Mother Day been for you in the past? How is it sitting with you now?
I really chime with what Melanie said, actually. So when I first discovered that I was going to be, you know, I wasn't going to have a family, I really struggled with Mother's Day. I did a lot of the pretending, yeah, I'm okay, I'm all right, I can go to the restaurant, I can be surrounded by all these triggers, I'm good. But actually, as time has gone on, I've had some very frank conversations with my mum saying, I can't do this anymore. It's not going to be something I'm going to be able to do. And actually, she's quite happy not to do it. She said herself, it's just a day. It's not, you know, I'm always going to be your mum. So why are we doing it on this day when the restaurants are packed? We're paying over the odds. you know, we're not getting necessarily the service that we want, so let's do it a different day. So I'm kind of like Melanie, we do it on a different day. This year is obviously different with everything that's going on, you know, with the pandemic and everything. And my mum's just like, well, I'm happy with a bunch of flowers, that's fine. If you don't want to do anything, I'm also fine with that. So my mum's been very understanding. And for me, I guess it's been about doing what I need to do to look after me. It's a little bit like Yvonne, you know, that self-nurturing, looking after you, realising that actually maybe other people aren't that bothered, and not having to feel that you've got to do all these things, you've got to jump through all these hoops if it's causing you pain. So I kind of, you know, I kind of do my own thing now. I do switch off all of social media. I've got to be honest, I've stepped back from social media anyway, but for me now it's about, I guess, a little bit being responsibly selfish, looking after me, and just checking in with my mum, making sure, you know, she's having a nice day. But that's it really for me.
Thank you. Well, thank you to all of us. There's lots of rich seams there already. I think perhaps in the UK, the kind of official name for Mother's Day is Mothering Sunday, and it is a church festival, and it really had nothing to do with mothers. The mother in Mothering Sunday is the mother church, i.e. the church near where you were born, where your family goes. And the idea is that on that day, everyone returns to their mother church. So it was a day when domestic servants would have the day off to return to where their families were, so they could all attend their mother church. And then Mother's Day didn't really start until, I think it's about 1912, something like that. And it was started by an American childless woman called Anna Jarvis, as a kind of a day to celebrate mothers, but she absolutely didn't want it to be, you know, the day it became. And after it became sort of incredibly commercialized, she went on a huge campaign to have it removed from the calendar, because she saw that it had completely gone away from what it was about, because hers, Mother's Day, was also about celebrating the mother in everyone. It was much more, Yvonne, you know, what you're talking about, but it got hijacked by pronatalism. You know, their message was too subtle. And for those of you for whom pronatalism is a new word, pronatalism is the name for the ideology that underpins the way that motherhood is valued in our society at the expense of women who are not mothers. It's not about mothers not needing to be valued. It's about a way of creating mothers as having more status, and fathers as having more status in society and being more important and being seen as proper grown-ups, whereas non-parents aren't. And a lot of other divisions and othering come from this unconscious conditioning that is called pronatalism, which starts very, very young. And Karen, if you want to type it into the chat, because a few people are looking up on it, and you'll find more about pronatalism in my book, and you'll also find lots of blogs and things that I've written where I talk about it. It is a really important thing to understand, because it is the ideology that drives the inequalities in our society between parents and non-parents. And once you start to know about it, I'm afraid once you know about it, once you can see it, you can't unsee it. It's like taking the red pill. Am I right, ladies?
Yeah.
Absolutely everywhere. And I'm noticing that this year, some of the pronatalism in marketing has had a bit of a wake-up call. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing a lot of more posts this year of companies sending out emails ahead of Mother's Day, giving people the option to opt out of Mother's Day marketing. And some companies still not doing it. What do we think? What do we think about that? Who would like to talk about that?
Yeah, I noticed that this a few weeks ago. I got a post from Mindful Chef. That's been my I've been trying Mindful Chef while we had a special offer on, and that's the first time I've had one, and it really raised my spirits. I just thought that is fantastic, and I did tweet about it, because I feel the more we celebrate the people that actually do that, the more the other companies might wake up and start doing the same.
Yeah. That's kind of what I did on social media.
Yeah.
I was flagging them up, and then the companies I was hearing that were not doing it, I was tagging them in my tweets and going, so and so and so, and wake up, pay attention. You know, I also think in this year, you know, thinking of women in the UK in particular, and in other parts of the world where you know, the pandemic has been really, really rough. Also, many women this year will have lost their mums, you know, and also many women already may, you know, our mothers may be dead. We may have a strained or estranged relationship from them. You know, one of the things I think that's so difficult about this holiday is there are so many layers to our experience that are misattuned to this kind of happy family Mother's Day celebration narrative, as all of the women who are still hopeful and who are trying to conceive, the women and couples. And, you know, you said to that, you know, Melanie, you had a miscarriage, and, you know, Mother's Day very, very close to each other. For those women who their journey has come to an end, their motherhood journey has come to an end around that time. You know, women who are single and childless, and they're seeing this also as a day when, once again, it's celebrating the kind of the family unit. And there's a sense that, you know, in so many ways they're excluded from that idea of a family unit. So it's like the mothers we wish we had, the mothers we wished we'd been. There's so many ways it can be triggering. And that messaging just, I don't know, just doesn't get out there.
No, absolutely. And I think we have a long way to go still as well, Jodie. And indeed, I love how you, you know, how you also, you know, mentioned that it's, for some women, Mother's Day is a loaded day for not just because of their childlessness, but also because of that estranged relationship, or because they've lost their mothers. And coming back to what you've also said about, you know, the option to opt out of those marketing emails, I do think it's something that I've seen it happen. The first time I noticed it was about 3 years ago that companies started doing it. I do think also that this year, because of indeed the global pandemic, more companies have jumped on the bandwagon to be more aware also around, you know, people who have lost their mothers due to the global or during the global pandemic, that it might be extra triggering. However, that really doesn't bother me, what the reasoning for those marketing companies is to send those opt-out messages. The fact that they are thinking about it, and that there is an awareness that is starting to form around the fact that Mother's Day is not that holy grail of celebratory day that everybody should be included in. I think already the awareness around that is just something brilliant. And, you know, I live in Belgium. I'm from Holland. I have not seen any company over here do it yet. However, what I have done is I have jumped on, you know, on the bandwagon of, you know, making sure that I've also started tagging companies that, you know, hey, this is happening on the other side of the channel. Mm-hmm. This is something you should be doing as well. So I think it is an incredible positive movement that is happening around the almost like the magic of Mother's Day. And I think it's something really, really positive, especially also for us within the childless community.
Thank you. And in the chat, there are others mentioning it from Denmark and other areas, saying they haven't seen a single one, you know, in their own country. Does see that England leads the way on quite a few things. I'm not quite sure why, but we often seem to. And around childlessness, we're certainly, I'd say the conversation around childlessness is definitely probably more advanced in England than elsewhere. And you know, the work of Gateway Women is, you know, which is 10 years this year, is, you know, possibly a big part of that, which is kind of amazing, but there it is. You know, we've made a difference, and that's spreading. They're saying in America, not happening in the USA. Wow. We are still one big corporate marketing machine. The person who said that, lucky in Europe, well, as far as we're hearing from the chat, only the UK, which, as newsflash, isn't in Europe anymore. That's a whole other topic. We're not going to go there.
Let's not.
So I had someone wrote to me ahead of the webinar and said that they'd kind of, you know, really seen red with the marketing email that they'd got, and they, for the first time ever, they'd sort of spoken up about it, and they thought it would be really helpful to have a almost like an email template of how to respond to some of these insensitive messages. And I thought that was such a brilliant idea. And within the Gateway Women online community, which is on Mighty Networks, we do have a topic called gentle activists. So I think that could be really something to do for next year, is to actually work together to create a template, because then you can kind of customize it, and we can have a little sort of grassroots movement, and our American cousins and our European cousins can join in too. And I think it'd be really good to develop like a powerful response that we can all start sending out. Because anyway, I think the companies that are doing this kind of opt-out marketing, it's actually very canny. Because the ones that don't mind Mother's Day aren't going to respond to it, but it might make them wonder. They might go, oh, why would people want to do this? And then the ones that do want to opt out, like us, become loyal to the brand. It's actually quite brilliant marketing.
That is. It's brilliant. I mean, I've had a couple where I've had Mother's Day or very pronatalist emails, and maybe I'm a bit further on, but I actually emailed them back and I said, this is, for me, this is actually quite triggering. Would you mind taking me off a list? Is there an opt out? Is there something you can do? Otherwise I'll unsubscribe. And actually I got 2 or 3 very good responses, sort of saying, actually, we don't have an opt out, but it's really something that we need to consider. We're going to take it away and have a look at it. So I think actually getting behind that movement, actually that's going to be like, come on, let's fight the power. Let's do this. I love it.
Well, I remember Berenice was very active on this about pre-pandemic times, because there were all these kind of special lines for mothers in supermarkets in the UK, which she went completely like absolutely not okay about. And so it's really good to see that it's, something is starting to shift. So we're getting a lot of agreement in the chat that a template would be really useful, and also women who have written back. And also, just to mention, this year Mother's Day in the UK comes very close to International Women's Day, which this week started with, which still too many organisations seem to think is International Mother's Day. So we got our work cut out there as well. Gateway Women's 10 years old this year. Maybe in the next 10 years we can we'll tackle all these things one by one until we make a dent on the collective. So I'm wondering what your tips might be for anyone who's on the webinar tonight who's really, really struggling with their grief. Maybe their friends are all have all got children and are posting about what they're going to be doing for Mother's Day, and they know that tomorrow, Facebook and those places will be full of all the cute pictures. How can we get through this day in a way that is different to what we might normally do? Any ideas?
One of the things that, like, for me, is coming off of social media and giving myself permission not to be there. I think, one of the things I learned with doing my grief work was the idea of self-care, which I never understood, realised before. And I know as well, culturally, it can be very difficult to say no to things and no to family events. But I found a way to be gentle with myself and give myself permission to do what I needed to do. So even if it was that I needed to connect with family because it was hard not to, I would then maybe do it for an hour and then come away from that and then have something for myself. So I'm off social media. I'll have the comedies out, non-mother films, nothing to do with mothers at all, but something that would lighten my spirit. Go for a walk in nature. This year, is my flowers. I got in. I can't remember what company I used, but I got them to deliver flowers for me. So I had a delivery driver turn up with a massive box of flowers, and I was like, oh yeah. Making sure the neighbours could see that. But this was something I just felt like I really wanted to do for myself this year, because essentially no one else was going to do it. So I thought, what can I do that is going to bring me joy and celebrate me that somebody else wouldn't necessarily think of, but I could do that for myself. And one of the things I'm doing tomorrow morning is I think it's Lana has the self-guided massage, which I have done before. It's really good. So I'm actually taking part in that tomorrow morning. So that's going to be a really nice way to start the day and have, you know, the rest of the day to do what I want to do.
Thank
So,
you. And for those who are wondering, the self-massage is something that happens within the Gateway Women online community. And it's is it a free event at the moment?
No, it's paid.
It's a paid event,
Yeah,
right?
it's a paid event, yeah.
Something really key about what you said there is planning. It's very, very normal, you know, when we've got a big triggering day coming up, an anniversary, Christmas, Mother's Day, you know, a special grief, what I call a kind of a grief and loss anniversary, you know, we all have them, that we kind of go into denial about it. You know, we kind of just sort of block out the thought of it, and and then suddenly it's upon us. And perhaps if it's a holiday where there are lots of kind of expectations that we'll just do what we always do, we can then find ourselves getting kind of railroaded into doing the thing that is very triggering. And, you know, I would say that for anyone who's feeling like that, to put a note in your diary next year for about 2 months before Mother's Day. You know, just work up the days and put it there, and put a note to yourself to make some decisions then and to communicate them then. It's if you have to change the way your family dynamic works, it's really good not to do it as a surprise. That often causes resentment and upset. But if you let them know, you know, 2-3 months before, just need to let you know, whoever you need to say, Mother's Day this year, I'm going to sort of switch it around, or I'm going to be away, or if it's someone, if you can talk to them about your grief, say, I've actually been finding it really hard, and I wondered if we could this year maybe swap it around, do it like this. It's going to very much depend on your relationship with your family. And what I'm hearing from, you know, some of the panelists here is that the reaction to that is often not what you expect. It's such a big deal in our heads.
Yeah.
That actually sometimes when you say it aloud and people go, yeah, no problem. And we're like, you know, it could take us like a year to build up to this thing. And then it's like, you know, the world doesn't fall apart. So I would say planning is really great, and planning your self-care. And Yvonne, I have to say, having flowers delivered, I am in awe of your self-care.
It's like, I'm gonna do it this time. Never thought of it before, but I was planning for my mum, and I went, hang on, I want flowers too. So yeah, I thought this, and I loved it. I loved, you know, knowing it was coming and hearing the doorbell ring, and then having the, you know, the delivery man hand them to me. I thought, oh my God, I'm loving this experience.
You know, I love it as well, because and Jodie, what you mentioned about planning, I think that is really important as well. And I also got myself flowers. They're up there on the shelf in the corner. I did buy them. I didn't get them delivered. I've just wrote down for International Mother's Day in May, I'm going to have them delivered. I'm going to sort it out this week as well already. And indeed also, you know, planning wise, you know, with the pandemic still, you know, lockdown living still in place where I am, you know, I can't go and visit my mother, nor in England, nor in Holland. So I've already said, you know, let's just do a video call. You know, so I kind of time box now also the time I do spend in Mother's Day, so to speak, so that I kind of turn the Mother's Day switch on for myself, and I kind of also to mentally prepare myself for that. Like, okay, I'm now going to be participating in Mother's Day as the event that it is, because I'm connecting with my mum, and also I'm really careful of positioning, or how I position myself in that interaction with her, so that I can also kind of protect myself within that interaction, so that I'm really there as the daughter of, rather than the not mother that I am. Yeah, so that has also been really instrumental in my preparation and my planning around Mother's Day, that I indeed, and I had to have a conversation with my mum about it, because, you know, I you know, when I was not this advanced in my grief, I was really triggered by the fact, you know, that the whole family was there. My siblings were there with their children as well. They're all kind of showing off, you know, oh, I got breakfast in bed, or I got this, or I got that. And I'm just sitting there like, oh yeah, I got to cuddle my cat, yay. You know, so it really is also, for me, it has been really instrumental in learning, how do I position myself in that interaction, and really be boundaried around, you know, what is acceptable for me and how far do I want to go. and where do I close myself off? And also, again, what I said earlier, to time box it so that you can also take yourself and allow yourself, give yourself that permission to take yourself out of the situation when you've had enough of it. And that has,
I think that is key, because in one of the things we talk about is something called bracketing in psychotherapy for a difficult event, and that's that's maybe this, you check in with someone, but you have someone you check in with beforehand. You have a period of time that is defined, when you're leaving, and then you have a kind of support package to deal with you afterwards. And rather like the stuff when we talk about Christmas family events, and these are in normal times when we can go places and meet people, it's always great, whatever the event is you may have to go to or attend that you fear will be difficult for you, have an exit plan. I love leaving early. I love leaving events early when I'm feeling great. I always have done. Do you know what I mean? It's like, don't sort of wait until you feel stuck to try and work out how to get out of something. Have that exit plan. Got to get home to feed the dog. If you don't have a dog, make up a dog, borrow a dog, but just sort of find a way where you have a kind of, oh, she's got to go. That isn't difficult, where you suddenly, if you're feeling really vulnerable and really triggered, that is not the moment to try and talk to people to start, I've got to leave because this is really hard.
Yeah.
You're vulnerable. As Karen said, you need boundaries. You need to protect your grieving heart. That is not the moment to try and get empathy.
No, and also, and so in that, when you do the planning around that and setting your own boundaries, have a safety net in place as well. And I use it. Jodie already mentioned the online Gateway Women community quite a few times. The online membership community. But have that safety net in place. If you have a friend who knows about your grief, or who you feel comfortable sharing it with, have them on speed dial after you've left and you are that blubbering mess in the car. I've been there. I've sat there, the ugly cry in the car. Man, that was really tough. That I had someone that I could actually connect with, or on the Gateway community to jump into and say, this has just happened. I feel really low, and then to have that support as well, to kind of to hold you, and to have that safe space as well as those boundaries of putting yourself in that situation. And I think that combination for me has been a lifeline in the past.
What I have experienced around that is that if there's no exit plan, we can feel stuck.
Yeah.
So when we do feel like I want to leave, we feel like we can't leave. And that then adds to the upset around it, because then we're beating ourselves up in a way in not being able to leave because we feel like we can't. And I found that I've done different things around my exit plan. I have had times when I've said to the person organizing it, I will try and come, but I'll see how I am on the day, because it might be too triggering for me. So if I don't turn up, this is why. If I do come, I will plan to, I may only stay for an hour. So I kind of set things up for myself to know, if I wake up and I don't want to go, then I'm not, because I've already set that in motion. If I do feel like I can go, I know that I'll give myself an hour. And after that hour, if I'm still okay, then I will stay. If I'm not, then I can leave. But even if I stay, I know I can go, because I'm already put the things in motion. And, as already Karen and Jodie have said, it really helps, because when I know I can get out, I know I can get out. Yeah. And the same with Karen said, because I've got my support, my Gateway group, that when I did my Plan B mentorship program, we've got our WhatsApp group, and we'll all be messaging each other in the same way. Sometimes someone's hiding in the toilet just saying, help. And we can give, each other the encouragement, even the help to just say, look, just go and do what you need to do. Yeah. And it really helps to have your cheerleaders in your corner as well.
Definitely. I've also got a signal as well. If I'm with my family and I've been triggered, I give them a signal to say, just don't come near me. I'm going to exit stage left. Please don't contact me. I'll contact you when I'm ready. And it's usually a couple of words. I'll just say, right, I've got to go now. And they know that that's it. I'm done and I'm not coming back, and it's non-negotiable. And I'll be in touch with them like a day later when I've calmed it all down. It's just managing those expectations, I think, isn't it? And having the confidence to do it. I know early on I really struggled with that stuckness. If I was sort of white knuckle somewhere that I didn't want to be, it's really hard to go, actually I'm going. You kind of have to almost learn it, don't you? Because you don't get a roadmap on how to deal with this.
And also
kind of
people
learn
then
it.
want you to explain, and you're not yet experienced enough to go, actually,
No.
I don't have to explain.
Yeah.
No, I'm not the childless Google.
I think that's where the what Yvonne was saying. I started to do that because I found it really difficult to explain why I needed to leave. So if I set that up in advance that I might not be able to stay very long, then I didn't get a load of questions because people were already expecting that I might not be there long. And I think what Sarah said is true as well. I think it's hard to do until you do it. I think it's a bit of a muscle that you get better at it with practice, being able to just say, you know what, I need to go if you're in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's scary to do it the first few times, but I think the more you do it, the easier it gets, because you realize that you've looked after yourself, and what you gain from that is huge. Yeah.
Well, this is, I mean, really useful things, you know, as always with, you know, you wonderful women. I learn so much from, you know, having these conversations with you too. And what I'm hearing is planning, boundaries, self-care, exit plans. And also I'm thinking it's that message to sort of that transition to feeling that actually our feelings are, and we're worthy. We don't have to be in situations that are so hard for us. And I think there's a lot of this condition, you know, comes back to the conditioning of us as women in our society, where we are grown up and conditioned to worry about everyone else's feelings. And I have to say, if we were mothers and we were in a situation with our children that was, and that our children were finding really upsetting, I don't think any of us would have any problem with saying, you know what, guys, I'm really sorry, we got to go.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because we'd be taking care of our children,
Definitely.
even if it upset bloody everyone. We'd say, we're leaving.
Yeah.
And yet, because it's our own hearts and our own situations, we go through, you know, absolute cartwheels in our mind. But it's building that muscle, like Melanie said, it's building that self-empowerment muscle, that worthiness muscle. You know, we are deserving of love and care too.
My cancer, because I really struggled with this because I was always the nice girl, and I always sort of would I always had preconceived ideas about how people would react to things, and I always put myself at a disadvantage as well. And what my counsellor, because I did have counselling for a while, and she helped me to think about mothering me as a child, imagining me, what I was like as a child, and thinking in those situations, I'm going to be the mother here that's looking after you as a child.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me. It might sound, I don't know if,
there's a whole chapter of my book in that, Emily, so I'm definitely with you. There's a chapter called The Mother Within, which is really about using self-compassion to kind of develop that we become the mothers to ourselves that we would have longed to have been to our children, you know, to develop that really nurturing, caring, self-compassionate inner voice. It's been absolutely transformational, you know, absolutely transformational, because I grew up with a very unhappy, very critical mum. So the internal messaging that I kind of internalized, my internal voice, what I call my inner bitch, was a very harsh one, because that's kind of what I'd grown up with. And so for me to tune into that voice, hear how I was basically bullying myself, kind of abusing myself internally all the time, everything, oh, that's no good, you're crap, this stuff, oh God, look what you've done. You know, just endlessly, this kind of slow running commentary of kind of real unpleasantness. And change that self-talk to something compassionate, like I would use with, I learned it from realizing the voice I use with my cat. Because, you know, he's like, hello, darling. Oh, are you feeling okay? Would you like a little tickle behind the ears? You know, just that very, very sweet, nurturing voice. I did know it. I just had to find it from a different part of me, and then gradually giving myself that sweetness. You know, it was so, it chokes me up because it was so healing for my soul. And I now am as nice to myself as I am to everyone around me. They don't get all of it. And you know, it used to be everyone else got the nice stuff, and I got the really harsh criticism. And now I give myself the same level of kind of kindness. Yeah, I mean, I give myself a kick up the butt occasionally too. But, you know, but not all the time. And usually because, well, I probably deserve it. Yeah.
I think one of the beautiful things around that, Jodie, is that it helps us look after ourselves.
Yeah.
And within that, it's tuning out all the negativity, because we know this is hard, and in some ways it probably sounds easy. Oh yeah, I just do that. But we can have so many misplaced loyalties, family loyalties, in terms of what will other people think, the shame, the this, the that, whatever we attach to something, that then stops us from doing what actually we really do need to do for ourselves. Because if we don't do it, we're actually, in a way, it can be quite self-destructive.
Yeah.
And then we become this shell of ourselves because we're pleasing everyone else. We're doing what looks right for everyone else. We're doing it so no one thinks X, Y, and Z of us. So part of mothering my inner child is about saying, you know what, I don't care what you think. It's what I really need. And, you know, other people are going to look at you and think, oh, you should do this and you should do it, because they all think they know what's right for us, or that will know what's best for us. And some of that is, no, be around your family because, you know, you should.
The should word, yes.
Exactly. But that's the thing, that no one's saying, actually, look after yourself, or you should look after yourself. You know, no one says that. So we have to say it for ourselves. We really do. You know, one of the things that helped me to be whole again was to say no, to set my boundaries, to say it was hard, because you do take it on board. You still think about it, because we're people, we're human. However, within that, I knew my inner child needed me. She needed that mothering. So I needed to do that, because I couldn't become whole. I couldn't become me and my authentic self and everything, and do what I needed to do, even in supporting other women, without actually doing that for myself first.
I also think, Yvonne, it's a great gift to the young people in your family to see you do this work. Because I didn't grow up around anyone who had anything other than toxic boundaries, which were kind of aggression, you know, aggression and anger. And to learn, you know, I know how my nieces, how much of an unconscious role model I've been for them. You know, they're now in their, you know, their early 20s to their early 30s, and having me as their auntie, I'm really beginning to discover how important it's been to them to have an auntie that isn't the mother of their cousins, you know, that is someone quite different, and they've seen me meet the challenges of life. And it's not necessarily even what I've said to them. It's just the person I am has had a big influence on them, on a different way to be a woman.
Yeah, it changes the narrative.
And I think if I'd known someone like you as I was growing up, I would have thought, oh, that's a different way to do it. Oh, you know, Auntie Yvonne isn't here, and she's kind of being really clear about what and, you know, it would have been so powerful to have great boundaries and self-care modeled. And it's really rare. It is really rare. Just noticing we have a few questions. Yes. Because we're into the last 15 minutes. So this is from someone who says, my mother died when I was 30. So it always makes it a bit complicated and mixed up. I always tried to keep the loss of her separate from my childlessness loss, but that's also difficult. Do you have any suggestions?
Wow, that's a tough one, isn't it? I think because you're talking about two different types of grief. I think what I hear there is compartmentalization. So you're kind of, this here is for my mum and this here is for me and my grief. And I guess if that's how you've dealt with it so far, then that's an ingenious way for you to be able to cope. And I don't know about everyone else, but obviously my mum's still here. And I think when I think about my childless grief, in terms of when I've lost somebody that I've really loved, that's very different. It's a more social grief. I can share it with potentially other people, whereas my childless grief is mine. So yeah, I don't necessarily have any tips other than to say, well, I think, what you've done there is an amazing way to cope with it.
Thank you, Sarah. From a sort of slightly technical point of view, and thinking about that compartmentalization that Sarah talks about, bereavement is an acceptable social loss. There are rituals around it. We're allowed to talk about it. People are allowed to remind you of it and ask you how you're doing about it. There is a set, whereas childlessness is a form of disenfranchised grief. It's a grief which is not socially acceptable, and which we are shamed for experiencing or talking about. I gave a lecture to York University's grief project last week about that, which will be up on the website next week. You know, what is disenfranchised grief? So that compartmentalization is also something that society suggests. We don't want to hear about your childless grief. You know, but you know, the fact that, you know, oh, how is it for you that, you know, you've lost your mum? How are you doing with that? You know, people do tend to have a bit of a timeline, even on bereavement. You know, after a couple of years, they sort of expect you to have got over it, which is extraordinary, because love is not something we get over, and grief is a form of love. My experience from working with many women is that if you're new to your childless grief, you may find that it wakes up many other forms of grief simultaneously, because grief never travels solo. And the grief which is in your heart for your mother and for the children not in your life, it doesn't know which bits allowed and which bits not allowed. You know, so it can be quite confusing sometimes in childless grief that so many other griefs seem to intensify. And if you're experiencing that, that's actually really normal. And it's like, it's as if your grief is going, okay, she's grieving, let's house clean. There's a loads of backed up stuff here that we've been waiting for the opportunity to process and heal, so that we can heal her heart, because that's what grief is. Grief is actually a healing energy. It's not an illness, and it's not out to derail your life. It's actually out to heal your heart. So
I think one of the things with grief is that there's a sense that we've got to do something with it, hence the process. And actually part of grieving can be sitting still and honouring that loss as well, which I have found, you know, again, I learned this, but I found that so beautiful to be able to sit and honour the feelings I had for however long I, you know, could do that, and whatever reminded me of my children, my unborn children, really helped. You know, my mum's still here as well, but I can imagine you could exercise that same, you know, tradition. You could create your own tradition in that and just sit with that and honor things around your mum and your childlessness, even about what would it have been like if your mum met your children. And you know, you can, there's so many, I think there's so many things you can do for yourself. There's no rules here. It's I suppose whatever you find peaceful to do within that.
My mum is still here, but my dad isn't, and I find that even, you know, anniversary, it might be the anniversary of losing my baby, or Mother's Day, or the anniversary of losing my dad. I find that all of those different losses, I feel all of them. So I always, you know, make sure I've earmarked those days as days for me, where I have time to just, I light candle for them, and I have a candle for each, and I just have time to think about them and sit with it. And it does help me enormously. I think it's that need to have some kind of ritual and recognition of what we've lost.
Yeah. I mean, ritual is a very normal, natural, deep part of what it is to be human, is to make manifest the unmanifest. You know, it's sad that as childless women, we're missing so many of the happy rituals of our society, because so many of them are connected to parenthood. And then if you're single, there are also lots of them are connected to partnerhood. And then we don't have the rituals around grieving and memorializing childlessness, which is something that's actually really important to do, and we can do that intentionally. I mean, some of the Gateway women I know have created like memorial gardens. There's a ritual that we do as part of the online being, which is also in my book, about writing a letter, you know, a goodbye letter to your children, and sort of burning it and then burying it or scattering the ashes somewhere. And then you have a place to go, where you can kind of sit and you know, memorialize. And at Christmas, you may have special, you know, Christmas ornaments that you hang on the tree that represent your children. There are lots of creative ways that we can memorialize our loss, and they are so helpful. One of the participants has said, I bought a statue for my garden with 5 birds to represent each miscarriage. That is absolutely beautiful. Oh, wow. We can each do that, and if you're thinking it sounds silly, I would say just give it a try. No one needs to know what these things mean except you. Yeah. But they can be so supportive. Now we have 3 questions which all sort of are on the same theme, and it's a lockdown theme, slightly. How do you deal with work meetings which turn into how was your Mother's Day meetings, or work meetings in general that become boast about your kids' meetings? With remote working, many work conversations are now happening during online meetings when you cannot just walk away, rather than the ad hoc conversations that used to take places in small groups in the office where you could excuse yourself. Do you have any tips on how to handle the inevitable conversations about Mother's Day on Monday?
We talked about
big out breath. I saw that.
We talked about this on the podcast, actually. So I'm a trainer, actually, that's what I do as a job. And what I tend to do is when you do get that inevitable, I was doing some training a couple of weeks ago, and someone, while I was doing the training, had their child running around, and I sort of said, actually, you know, are you able to do the training at the moment? And I said, do you want, you know, are you able to sort of participate in this properly? And in the end, the child came on. I went, oh, hello, and that was enough to the child just went and left, and that was enough to sort of deal with it. But in other ones where it's a meeting, I've actually turned the camera off. I've still been there, and I've left a little private note for the organizer and just said, look, I'm still here, but right now I need to just have my camera off for a second. And that's been quite useful, because you can private message them through whichever platform you're using. So I've done that.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you for that. I've done similar things. When this first occurred, when I didn't feel strong enough to kind of stand up for myself, it really floored me. It was so triggering, and it took me a lot of practice and a lot of, you know, support from women like yourself, to really get to a place where I grew in confidence to actually speak up about, again, my needs, my boundaries. It seems to be a theme for today as well, that you know, by daring to speak up for our own needs, and also by being able to, by daring to address the fact that something is triggering for you, you know, that already quite often that can already diffuse the situation. Because 9 times out of 10, is my experience, is that people aren't even aware of how this comes across on video, on Zoom meetings or anything like that. They're 9 times out of 10, they're not even aware that they are actually triggering someone else who's also on the call. So by calling it out, that also creates an awareness with other people, with people on the call. Oh, I'm really, really sorry, because what I've really learned from my work colleagues as well, when I was still in corporate life, is that you know, nobody's out to make anyone else feel uncomfortable on purpose. It's quite often it's an unawareness that they have around it, and by just calling them out, and you can do that like a bull in a china shop. I've done that as well. Trust me, it doesn't work. Well, it kind of does, but it doesn't. But you can be really polite about it. And what I would recommend, and I am just going to plug that here a little bit. Last year for World Childless Week, we did a whole webinar around how to deal with comments that hurt. And you can actually watch that back on the worldchildlessweek.net website. It's an hour-long webinar where we actually talk about how to deal with comments that hurt. So if you want to know more about it, because looking at the time, you know, we can talk about this for another hour, I think. But there is information on it, and I'll pop it in the chat as well in a minute to let you know. But that has really been addressing it, calling people out on it, and not in a negative way, but just really kind of say, you know, I feel really uncomfortable with having to observe this? Would you mind moving your camera away so that I don't see your child doing their homework in the background, or that I don't have to see your child running? Or could you even move to a room where you have a bit more privacy? Because, you know, I feel a bit uncomfortable with this. And Sarah's suggestion as well, you can turn your video off. That's a brilliant one as well, if you don't feel comfortable to speak up just yet.
Yeah, thank you. And really, really lovely, helpful, practical tips there as well. My goal is always that if you don't feel strong enough to do this yet as well, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a good idea maybe to plan ahead, perhaps speak to the people who are, perhaps speak to someone, like find an ally within the organization who you can explain it to, who can maybe help get the message out. Because when Karen says generously that 9 times out of 10 they don't know they're doing it, I would say it's 10 times out of 10. Very, very rare. Because we stay silent, they don't know. And then they do what upsets us, and we're upset that they don't know it's upsetting. And the vicious circle continues. But if you're really in deep grief, it's very hard to speak up. However, as you start to come through this, it can be really helpful to you and to those who aren't yet able to speak up, to find a way to speak up. And one of the things we're doing some workplace activism within the Gateway Women online community, where we've got women who are getting together, who are supporting each other in speaking up within their organizations and creating templates for all of this. So if you feel ready to do something like this within your organization and would like some support, come and join us in the Gateway Women online community. So we are actually just a few minutes left. So I just wanted to do another round just to close. Do on my screen the order that you are. Melanie, would you like to close with a few comments?
Yeah, thank you for organising this. It's been lovely just to touch in with everybody and hear. I've actually learnt things and new tips for myself as well. I will be having flowers delivered, and Mother's Day, yes, it's a hard day, but it does get easier when you start putting all these different ideas into action and looking after yourself. That I think that is the biggest tip that I would give to anybody, is think about what you need, really tune into how you're feeling and put yourself first. Absolutely.
Thank you, Melanie. Sarah?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. Thank you to everyone that's watched. For me, I think the takeaway has been, again, I've learnt tips as well. I might not be getting myself flowers, but I might treat myself to drink a glass of wine or something. But no, I think it is about planning ahead, I think, because when you're triggered, those emotions, you're not in a fit state to then go, right, I'm going to do this, and this. So I think the planning ahead really is key, because that can be Mother's Day, Christmas, whichever day is triggering for you, isn't it, really, or meetings even. So yeah, I think that's the key takeaway for me. So thank you for sharing that one. I thought it was really good.
Thank you. Yvonne?
Me, it's giving yourself permission, looking after yourself, and being around other women who understand. Because it really, when you're on your own doing it, you can talk yourself out of it so quickly. So being around women who understand and can cheer you on and help you. And you also find sometimes we have an idea and we think it's a bit raw and it doesn't feel quite right, but they can help refine that. It's really, really useful. So, you know, if you're in Gateway, the women in Gateway will know and understand this. If you're not in Gateway, I'd say, you know, I'd definitely encourage you to join the community, because there's so much support and resources around there, and being able to have that connection with other women just to help plan and get you through those moments is really valuable.
Thank you, Yvonne. Karen?
Oh yeah, what to add? I just want to thank all of you, incredible women, for your wisdom in this hour. I always feel so privileged to be amongst my GW sisters, as we are known. And I want to thank all the participants as well. And for me, my biggest advice to everyone is indeed, you know, be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. You know, don't let those inner gremlins, or as Jodie calls them, that inner bitch, don't let her take over. And you know, and please know that it's okay to put yourself first. It's not a selfish act. it really is an act of self-kindness and a self-compassionate, self-love, self-loving act, I should say, to put yourself first and to protect you and protect your vulnerable heart, especially on a day like tomorrow. And I wish you all, you know, a very, very happy Other's Day for tomorrow, and I hope you get to celebrate you tomorrow. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, and hopefully see you in the community. Jodie.
Thank you, Melanie, Sarah, Yvonne, and Karen, and all of the participants. We've had a lot of you here this evening. It's been wonderful to have all your comments in the chat. If any of you would like a copy of the chat who are registered for the call, do let me know. Just send me an email. When the email comes to you saying, here's the recording, just let me know you'd like the chat and I'll send it to you. Lots of really important conversations happening there, and I wish we had time to dive into them. So I would say that tomorrow, in your heart, you are a mother. You get to be Mother's Day. You get your mother in heart gets Mother's Day too. So I would say take very good care of your mother's heart tomorrow. You know, she deserves love and kindness tomorrow too. You're not, you know, we don't have to orphan our mother's hearts on Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. So lots of love, all of you, and see you soon. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.